Hello, welcome everyone. Greetings from the library cave. I am Aspen Dracena, your friendly neighborhood ice dragon bookworm VTuber. Hi Belka, how are you doing? It's good to see you again. Today we are doing one of my favorite things about having this channel. Is that I can take some time to introduce everyone to authors I know who are really amazing people who I really admire and respect a lot. And today we have somebody really amazing, Emily Wynne, the author of Princess of the Pomegranate Moon. And we kind of have a special treat today because when Emily and I were discussing how we were going to do the stream, we talked a bit about whose voice needed to tell this story. So usually I'll read, the first chapter or 2 or 3 from a book, but tonight, instead of me, it's going to be Emily. So Emily pre-recorded herself reading the first chapter of her book, and we'll talk a little bit about why she's the one who is reading rather than me. I think it's for a very, very good and very important reason. And I'm really excited because I got to read this book when it was first submitted to Balance of Seven. And after the first paragraph, I knew we had to publish this book. I mean, it was just the first paragraph. The writing was so beautiful. I was like, nope, this is our book. We need this book. And this book needs to be read. So I'm really excited about this. I feel especially excited about this one so much because I know how much this book means to Emily. And so I am going to start in 3, 2, 1.
Good evening. I'm Emily Wynne. I will be reading from my book, Princess of the Pomegranate Moon.
Let me know if you can't hear it.
Chapter 1. The Dancer. The season was uncertain, as it always was, but the stars and the angle of the sun showed it was late in the year, and a cool wind blew over the earth and rustled the sparse grass in the lands beyond the forest. Shadows loomed over the treetops from the hills, long, criss-cross shadows from things not quite like branches. Few now living had seen what cast the shadows up close, for of those from older generations, brave or foolish enough to follow the witch-lights through the woods, few had returned with the wits to describe what they saw. Those who were able had been unwilling to speak of it, nor even of whether their reluctance was out of fear or due to some occulted prohibition set upon them. Though the shadows rose above the trees, they fell rarely upon the borderlands on the near side of the forest, or the rooftops of the nearby town. The people disagreed whether this was a blessing or a more fearful omen, for the shadows were obscured by the greater shadow of the mountain. It stood high above the valleys and trees, above the hills and shadows, as tall as heaven and old as the earth, and it was called only the mountain, for it knew no other name. From the town, at certain points of the year, the sun seemed to circle the mountain in the sky, rising in the east to its left, and setting in the west to its right. In this late age of the world, only those skilled in sorcery and hidden arts of subtle omens had a chance at telling the seasons rightly. Though the sun's yearly course was easy enough to follow, the winds and crops were fickle and prone to secret fates, and the moon itself was a mystery, its phases obscure and unreadable. The arcane crescents it traced in the night, intelligible to only the most skilled astronomers. Still, it had at last become clear enough that the season of shadows fell over the valley, a time when mists obscured the earth, and clouds hung heavy in the air. The sun was weak and thin, too feeble to tell the time of year, but the whispers of the air were unmistakable to the learned, and the moon grew full enough for all to see. In the evening the sky became deep and crystal, a shade of violet. The stars glittered like gems in the night, and though the moon shone white, it was crowned all about with a ring of color, a rainbow prism through the mists that the people of the valley knew heralded the coming of summer's end. So the clouds gathered overhead and darkened wide swaths of the little village of Tudor, a quiet settlement in the fields bordering the forest. The people went abroad in the narrow stone streets only rarely as the season of shadows came, and then mostly during daylight. But on this day, as evening approached and the red tint of the setting sun cast long, fearsome shadows down the alleys, a crowd gathered in the square, an unfamiliar sight at this time of year. They encircled a dancer, straining above each other to see her, thoughts drawn for a moment away from their homes and their families, their labors and their fears, strung along like streamers in the wake of the dancer's grace. More than a few tossed coins, flowers, trinkets, and the occasional folded slip of paper bearing messages hastily scrawled in shame and hope, though most knew the dancer was little likely to give them a glance. The dance drew on, and the performer, a woman of beauty unmatched by either the women or men of the town, showed little intention of stopping. Her skin was soft and smooth, her movements smoother still, and her brightly colored dress and rainbow shawls flowed and spun in her wake. Bangles and strings of beads rattled on her arms, and her nimble hands tapped gently but resonantly upon a small hand drum. With that tympanum, she kept a hypnotic beat that she followed in her dance, and to which the people lost themselves. They nearly abandoned their reason, flowing along, clapping their hands, lost in the intricate labyrinth of sound the dancer conjured and weaved in the air with her drum. The crowd grew larger the longer she danced, drawing in more folk who heard the rapidly spreading word of the performer in the square. Her costume was clearly meant to take advantage of this attention. Her dress was a bright, cutting purple of a rare dye, with a short skirt that spun around her knees. She waved turquoise and yellow sashes around her shoulders seductively, and her thick wild hair flew about her, unnaturally dyed the deep blue-green of the pine trees. Stuck in a patch of dirt between broken flagstones stood a short sword with a mirrored white blade and a silver crescent guard like the moon on the hilt. The sword marked the center of her dance, as the pole star in the tail of the great dragon above tethered the whirling planets that had begun to shine in the sky. The dancer spun, and the crowd gasped with a clamorous mixture of amazement and fear as small fires bloomed in the air all around her. The floating, spinning flames cast an unnatural yellow-green light over the square, which reflected in the dancer's heavy-lidded eyes, making them flash in the glowing dark of the evening. In this eerie cast, the ears that poked gently out of her hair seemed to come to slight, faunish points. The magic of the lights could be heard as well as seen. Like strange, distant flutes, the lights bent the wind with an unearthly hum, accompanied by the beat of the tympanum. Whispers hissed all around the crowd as the dancer whirled. "She casts witch lights like those in the woods. She's a mage. She's no traveler. She's a fairy," called a voice clear and sudden. Perhaps she was a fae, crept out of the forest on the eve of the season of shadows, or a changeling left in the mortal world. Perhaps she was only a dancer, wandering into town for some place to sleep warmly after a day on the road. No matter the truth, she laughed brightly and bowed theatrically, luxuriating in the impression she made. As the dancer rose from her bow, a boy caught her eye. He stood right at the front of the crowd, head never turning from her as she danced, paying no attention to the rest of the audience. He smiled when she twirled with a particularly impressive spin, a growing expression of wonder on his face, his eyes lighting up whenever she cast a bright spell in the dark of the evening. She was used to such wonder from children and different expressions of attention from older boys and young men, but this enthralled youth looked to be about the dancer's own age, and the innocence and sincere joy that lit his face brought a smile to her own. She cast a light in the shape of a flower toward him, and he laughed and flinched back when it sparkled out where he stood. Her dance drew to a close, the light and eerie music of her spells fading away as her body completed her improvised choreography almost automatically, while betraying no sign of her thoughts. She graced the audience with a flourish, as a few applauded, while others murmured lowly, wondering about the magic this woman brought to the town. For her own part, the dancer cast kisses into the air, drew her sword from the earth, lifted it above her head, and vanished. Not behind a curtain, but into thin air. Hushed murmurs turned to astonished gasps, and the thin applause rose to a clamor from those more delighted than afraid. Meanwhile, the dancer stepped silently and invisibly through ethereal mists to a corner of the square covered by trees. The townsfolk lingered to talk and argue about the nature of this newcomer. Their voices carried far into the night, until, one by two, they reluctantly retreated to their homes or to the tavern. Tonight, the moon grew huge and strange, and drew around itself a cloak of clouds shimmering in a rainbow halo. It was the pomegranate moon, so common during this cloudy, rainy season. The same moon that had witnessed the tears that fell so long ago. Unseen by the villagers, the dancer looked up at the sky through the tree branches and the mists of her invisibility. And though the light shimmered and wavered through the fog between dimensions, it nonetheless emboldened her weary heart. On the periphery of the square sat a high old house, whose overhanging second story nestled among the leafy branches of the surrounding trees. Inside, the atmosphere was warm and bright, the hearth and lanterns casting an orange glow that spilled out the windows into the evening. People flocked in out of the night, always leaving the door ajar, and they huddled in groups of friends around tables, their arguments lowered to a simmer or stirred to a heat by their ale. So engaged were the tavern-goers in discussion of the uncanny girl in the square that few noticed the faint shimmer in the corner far away from the lanterns, or the slender figure in a dark, wide-hooded jacket who slipped out of the shadows and made for the bar. In a hushed voice, heeded by none but the barkeep, the figure procured a mug of ale and fell back to a corner booth away from the hearth and the light and the people. The figure sank into a seat and drank beneath the deep, shadowy hood. "It isn't attractive to brood," said a quiet voice from beside the table. The hooded figure looked up from the ale in her cup. Despite the shadow cloaking her face, gray eyes glinted clearly in the dim candlelight as a lock of blue-green hair fell across her forehead. "And if I'm trying not to attract attention to myself?" A woman stood before her, leaning on the table, her smooth shoulders hunched within the drooping straps of her dress. Grinning, she sat uninvited beside the hooded girl. "Why shouldn't you? You're the dancer from the square, aren't you? You had half the town gasping at your every footfall earlier, and with good reason. You should be flattered." "If I assure you I am, will you leave me alone? I'm not in the mood for company tonight." "I respect that," the woman replied. "But I should warn you, if I leave, it'll surely only be a matter of time before a pack of rough young men notice you all alone and decide you would make welcome company. Your mood would be far worse then, I promise you. The men of Tudor aren't particularly interesting." "I'm more than capable of taking care of myself, but I appreciate your point." "I'm sure you are," the woman said. "I'm Astra." The dancer eyed her curiously, sighed, and pushed her hood back enough to reveal her face in the dim tavern light. "My name is Elsinore." "And where do you come from, Elsinore?" Astra leaned in and playfully put her arms around her new friend's neck. "From somewhere else in the river valley? From the lands beyond?" Grinning slightly, she leaned in close to Elsinore's ear and whispered, "Or from somewhere else?" "Somewhere else?" Elsinore asked with a tangible lack of curiosity, almost to be polite. Astra giggled. "Surely you know what they're saying about you. That you come from a place not far from here at all, but somehow at the same time farther than anywhere on Earth." "I don't understand what you mean at all," Elsinore responded quietly, looking only at the glass before her. She rotated her drink slowly on the tabletop with her fingertips, head down, her eyes only distantly considering the dark liquid within. "From the forest," Astra said. "You must have passed it on the way into town. Unless that's where you came from to begin with. The forest and the strange place of mounds beyond the forest, at the base of the great mountain." Elsinore smiled at last, very slightly. "I'm sure you'd know if I came from that place. Don't your people here in Tudor do business with your neighbors beyond the forest?" Astra laughed sharply, loudly enough that Elsinore feared she would draw attention to their table in the corner. But as her eyes scanned the room, she saw the others in the bar kept to their own conversations, still yelling their arguments or slamming their mugs on the tabletops. They paid a woman's laughter no mind, if they heard her at all. "Your humor is very dry," Astra said. "I like that. Or at least, I presume you're joking, and you're not truly ignorant of the forest and the place beyond." "You're right on all counts," Elsinore said. "I'm not from around here at all, but I have heard a little." that there are creatures in the forest, dangers best left undisturbed, and that strange people live in the mounds who follow laws the rest of us cannot fathom, people who aren't men or women at all, but who townsfolk simply call the Fae. The people of the mounds, Astra said, clearly discomforted by the name Elsinore spoke. No one sees them or speaks to them, but a few poor travelers hear their whispering voices if they approach too near the edge of the woods, and come back claiming to have heard every manner of wild story. A few even say the voices speak of things that have yet to happen. Folks have also been saying that more than just a fairy, you're a changeling, an unearthly creature left here years ago by the dwellers in the mountain in a mundane body, such as that of a simple country boy, but your true nature gradually revealed itself, shifting your body over time into that of the unearthly beautiful woman who could prey on the boys in our town and make them the sort of creature as yourself. Astra smiled and leaned in. Is that the case? With your wild hair and dress and strange accent? What kind of woman are you? She looked deep into Elsinore's eyes, and both women breathed steadily and evenly. Neither spoke for a long moment that dragged on in its tension, before at last one of them laughed. It took Elsinore an awkward moment to realize that the laughter had been her own. I'm the kind of woman who likes to dance and tell fortunes, but to otherwise be left alone, Elsinore said quietly. I came by the northern road and could only see the mountain in the distance. I'd been warned of the forest and the people beyond, and didn't wish to risk tempting the fates by traveling so near the mysterious place alone. Astra gestured at the short sword with the moon hilt that leaned against the traveler's bag. You worry even with a weapon like the one you carry? Oh, I'd have thought someone who knows so much about the people of the mounds would know the stories, Elsinore said. About how the people are impervious to ordinary weapons. How stone and bronze pass through their bodies as if they were air. How wood grows from their heads like horns, and leaves flutter from their arms like feathers, and gold accumulates on their skin and soaks into their bodies like water. They fear only wrought iron, whether spikes, bars, fences, or chains. Even simple shovels and spades can cause them harm and drive them away. Elsinore shook her head. No, my mother gave me the sword to protect myself from more earthly threats. I have a dagger, cold iron blessed on an altar to my goddess, that I hope can protect me if the stories are true. Astra smiled knowingly, and Elsinore felt her eyes scrape over her from shoulder to fingertip. Astra's gaze lingered on the ring Elsinore wore on her middle finger, silver twisted decoratively around a tiny mirror. Elsinore smiled and looked into the ring. When the light reflecting off the mirror dimmed, she looked up, afraid of being interrupted by yet more locals curious about her nature. It was the barkeep, a young man whose fat, muscular belly and broad arms gave the unmistakable impression of strength. He bore a tray with several mugs of ale and plates of food. Laughing, Astra touched the startled woman's arm. Elsinore, you've already met Rosario, my partner. The young barkeep nodded pleasantly at the introduction. You've barely touched your ale, so I didn't think you needed more, but I thought you could use something to eat. He set the tray down as he took a seat on the other side of the table. The plates all bore pieces of roasted chicken. Thank you, but I'm sorry. I don't eat meat. Elsinore self-consciously sipped from her glass of ale. Astra narrowed her eyes teasingly. It's ever less clear whether you're a woman or a fairy. Tell me, do you survive on flower petals and dew? Bread, replied Elsinore, looking into her ale. Root vegetables, bean curd, all manner of things, really, but animal flesh. Other creatures shouldn't have to die for me to eat. Rosario shrugged. Sorry, I didn't think. More for me, though. So you're a priestess, then? Astra asked. A traveling mendicant, maybe? Dancing and telling fortunes in exchange for offerings to that goddess of yours? Something like that. Elsinore rotated her glass on the table, running her finger along the rim. Do you see your goddess only through ecstatic dance and self-deprivation? Or do you ever use other methods? Astra reached into a pocket in the folds of her skirt and drew out a pipe and a pouch tied tight with string. She packed the bowl tightly with weed from the pouch, which smelled pungently of cannabis, and then searched in the folds of her skirt with one hand, evidently for a match. Grinning, Elsinore snapped the fingers on the hand on which she bore the mirrored ring. In the air, just above her finger, flickered a tiny flame, the same she cast with the spell of colored lights that spun around her while she danced. It was only a simple cantrip, a little spell Elsinore could always remember, but Astra laughed quietly, eyes widening. Leaning in, her lips on the mouthpiece of the pipe, Astra drew in smoke as she lit the cannabis with the magic flame. She exhaled thoughtfully, then smiled as Elsinore produced a pipe from the folds of her scarves. It was long and narrow, a straight stem of reed connecting a metal mouthpiece and a tiny bowl about the size of a fingertip. Astra passed her the pouch of weed, and Elsinore prepared her pipe, lighting it with another witch flame. Taking a long drag, she blew a long, thin stream of smoke over the others' heads. Then she held the pouch out to Rosario, who paused in devouring his meal to hold up his hands in refusal. Keep it, Astra told her. I didn't toss you any coins for your dance. Smiling, Elsinore slipped it into her bag, which she shouldered, along with her sword, as she stood from the table and bowed. Thank you for your company and for the hospitality, but I've decided I need to walk in the night air and think by myself in the quiet. And what if you run into any unappealing characters? Astra asked. Will your sword keep you out of trouble, or lead you into it? Elsinore grinned. I think all of that sort in this town are spending their night here in the bar. She indicated the tables, which had grown no less rowdy. Well, if you return, there will be a clean room ready for you, Rosario said. You're welcome to stay as long as you're in town. That's very generous. Perhaps I'll return once the ale has quieted the company down. Or perhaps I'll find other accommodations. Smirking deviously, Astra bowed her head, and Rosario waved good-naturedly before returning to his dish. Elsinore retreated out the door into the night, hood up, sword hilt over her shoulder, and pipe held delicately along her finger down at her side.
Heather Marie 1993 just followed.
Hi, that was timely. Thank you for waiting until that was over. Hang on just a moment. I'm gonna turn on my microphone so we can talk. So, yeah. Can you hear me, Emily? Uh-oh.
I can hear you, but there was like a
delay?
delay and a doubling.
Okay. Do you have both the Twitch on and the the...
Oh shit, yeah.
That might be it. Take your time. We have an ad starting soon, so... But, yeah, so everyone, that was Emily reading the first chapter, Princess of the Pomegranate Moon. I was so excited that Emily wanted to do it herself. Hang on a second. All right. We're just doing some background technical fun. But
Okay, I
anyway,
think we're okay now.
perfect. So yeah,
I didn't realize that would happen if I had both windows open.
yeah, it's one of those streaming things that you learn to deal with once you've had some practice.
Okay.
So yeah, no, you're good. You're good. That's not unusual to happen.
Has
Um,
happened.
yeah. So real quick, I wanted to talk a little bit about why we had you read that chapter instead of me, because I think it's important for people to know and people to understand, and that I was totally for it too, because this is your voice and this is your character. And we talked a bit about how part of it is sometimes an author knows the tone of their book better than anybody else, but also because the main character is trans, and as a cisgender woman, my voice isn't going to be the same as somebody's voice who is trans. So, if you want to talk a little bit about that, you're welcome to.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for doing that, for being willing to do that and have
Yeah,
me read it.
absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
I very much appreciated that, and also I guess part of like one of the reasons that I wanted to do that specifically, and you mentioned like the voice, and there's a lot of meanings of the word voice, and like the voice of the people, the voice of this particular group. But like one of the characterizations of Elsinore in the book is specifically her literal voice, um, and how she doesn't have like a lot of what we would call because she's trans,
Right.
but is not called trans because they don't really have any knowledge of our society in the book without giving too much away about in which direction.
Right.
So they don't really use a lot of words that we would use for anything. They're obviously not even supposed to be speaking English, but she doesn't have a lot of what we would call dysphoria, except about her voice,
Right.
like literally her voice. She she is uneasy and uncomfortable about it, and so part of what I thought would be important for doing a reading of the book would be to have somebody with specifically a trans feminine like voice
Right.
um, doing the reading of it. And I don't actually have a lot of dysphoria about my voice. There's a lot of Elsinore that came from me, being that she's a character that I wrote. Um, there's a lot of all of the characters that are things from me, being that they're characters that I wrote. And I don't personally, just as a personal thing, I don't really have a lot of voice dysphoria. I don't really care. I think my voice is fine, just in general. But Elsinore does, and I thought it was important to actually have her speak
Right.
with the voice of a trans feminine person.
Right. And and we talked about this. I felt like that made a lot of sense. You know, I mean, this. I think there's something very powerful about having the right voice read the right book. And I've heard audiobooks before where the reader was just not the right match for the book, and it can impact how the person listening receives the story. So, there's one book that I listened to on audio where the reader had a lovely voice, but he was so calm and mellow that it was putting me to sleep. And this was a children's adventure story, and his voice was just too calm to do an audiobook. So it kind of impacted my experience of it. So a lot of times the person who voices the book, it's important because it helps how we receive the story and how we understand the characters in the story, especially the lead character or characters. So
Yeah, really. I don't have a chance to listen to a lot of audiobooks. I read more books
right.
physically, optically, with my eyes.
Right,
I don't
right.
really know how to describe
Yeah.
the difference. From the page, I guess.
Right.
But my girlfriend listens to a lot of audiobooks, and she's telling me about the narrators all the time. Like sometimes she straight up cannot listen to a book because of the narrator's just not correct.
Right,
It's just
right.
not a good choice.
Right,
Like,
right.
this doesn't make any sense. I can't listen.
Yeah, yeah. And with a story like yours, I think it's just it's important to, I think, also honor that a lot of times trans people's voices get spoken over. And sometimes even people who are supportive will sometimes try to speak so much for the trans community that they don't really give people in the trans community the space to voice for themselves. So that too is really important. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to step back too and let you make that choice. So, I think it's all good. you know?
Thanks for doing that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's important, I think. So you already introduced yourself at the beginning of the recording you did. Um, so you've written Princess of the Pomegranate Moon. You and I know that you have a manuscript that is being looked at by Balance of Seven right now. Is there any other writing that you've done?
Well, there's not really a lot or anything that I've had like published or publicly available
Mm-hmm.
very much. Um, Mostly what I do otherwise is I write a lot of very heartfelt, angsty poetry. That I'm like, how do I get some kind of a venue for horrible, angsty poetry? And I've tried to do some like I've tried to think of like what kind of venue I can do for that, and I haven't been able to like think of the thing. And I'm like, can I do a zine? Can I make a zine?
Right, right,
Do I have that kind of energy in myself?
right.
For anything.
Or find someone to help you set it to music. And then it can be
Oh, geez.
angsty poetry music.
Oh, geez. That's all I need. That sounds great.
Right.
Yeah, oh, geez. Maybe I should look into that.
Right, right. So actually, it looks like somebody in chat has a question. So
Oh, yeah, I had to
Unnatural
post that video.
20, as a friend of yours. Yes, please,
Yeah.
please. If you have a question, you are very welcome to ask. The only thing I'll say is if it's a disrespectful question, I'll say no. But I don't think you will. People are usually pretty nice here, so
Like,
yeah.
what's this my friend Unnatural 20 who I'm like, I want to say your name, but then I'm like,
Right,
that's
right.
not inappropriate. That's not your.
Okay.
So, but also I can't see the chat. So,
Yeah,
'cause I had to
yeah.
close that because it was causing me some very big
Right.
technical difficulties.
Right.
Um,
So I'm
yeah,
going
what
to
question
read
do you
out the
have?
question. So they ask, Elsinore describes herself as a priestess, even in the first chapter. Was the book name ever Priestess of the Pomegranate Moon?
No.
No. Yes or no question.
I can elaborate upon that. Yeah, no, uh, yeah, that I mean, without giving too much away. Can I give stuff away? Can I spoil things?
Spoil as much as you feel comfortable with. The book has been out for about a year now.
Been out for about a year now.
Yeah, yeah.
I've
If
seen
you
some
haven't
interviews
read it,
about it.
it's worth reading. If you have read it, you know what it is. But only spill as much as you're comfortable with, I guess.
Okay.
You know, people will, I would say keep things as vague as you can so you aren't completely spoiling it, but just
Oh,
enough.
oh, okay. I was just gonna do whatever.
Okay.
Um, yeah. Well, I mean, this isn't really a spoiler,
Hmm.
really. But like, I mean, she's not a princess. There isn't a princess. There's not really such a thing as princesses. They don't really have that in their society. It's Princess of the Pomegranate Moon, kind of in the same sense as Warrior Princess,
Right.
who is not a princess,
Hmm.
but it's just called that because it's something that, respectively, the characters got called at certain points and titled. Um, like she's Priestess of the Pomegranate Moon, and actually the meaning of the thing that she gets called that is the source of the title is actually Priestess of the Pomegranate Moon. And princess comes from like an emotional print the title itself, Princess of the Pomegranate Moon, that came from a particularly, as you know, Aspen,
Hmm.
and as Unnatural 20 knows, um, and people who read it would know it comes from an emotional scene and part of the book where that phrase and image
Right.
um, is relevant and forefronted. Um, but no, the title was never going to be priestess. I feel like priestess, I guess it has the same number of syllables, but it feels more unwieldy
Hmm.
to me. Um, Also, like priestess, like I don't know, priest and priestess don't feel like very marketable title words.
Mm.
I feel like you see princess
Hmm.
and you're like, aha,
Well, I
with
think
an interesting thing in the title. I don't know. It's an afterthought, but
I think
sorry, go on.
ultimately too, when people see the word princess, there is a certain tone it conveys. Like it's somebody who has power, and it can represent somebody who um, may use that power in a lot of different ways. So, it's definitely, and while priestess does have power too, um, I think the way that Elsinore is a priestess is probably not typical of what we think of
Yeah,
as the modern concept of one.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
What does that mean, and what will that mean in this context? And I feel like that raises the question of what does that mean in this context
Hmm.
to a reader looking at the cover that
Right,
is in more of a deflecting way than in a
right,
looking in a curiosity way.
right,
If that makes sense.
right, right,
Like,
right,
what does that mean? I'm not going to read it. As
right.
opposed to, what does that mean? Let's find out.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, since this is a very casual interview, you are welcome to ask questions throughout, and I'll read them out loud and share them with Emily, so that
Oh,
everybody,
I'm sorry.
yeah, in chat, if anybody has a
Am
question in chat,
I'm not
yeah.
allowed to ask questions.
Oh, you can ask questions for sure. I was just making sure the chat knew, like, they can ask questions at any time.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
If I come up with any
Right,
questions,
right.
I'll ask
If
them.
you have any questions, you can ask too. um, so, is there
Okay.
anything that you want the audience to know about yourself in general? About who you are and your interests? And yes, Emily, you.
Oh, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, what did I what? what is there about me? Um, well, I'm the
I think
author of
it's
Princess of the Pomegranate Moon.
right. It's hard when you're an
Oh, I'm
author
sorry.
sometimes to talk about yourself.
Yeah.
You know.
I don't know. What do I? Oh, yeah. Here it is. Devoted pantheist neo-pagan. This is the
Hmm.
author bio page.
Yeah.
Um, I guess I'm pantheist,
Hmm.
definitely. Um, Spinoza, Carl Sagan,
Right.
Einstein. Um,
I love Carl Sagan.
I guess I'm a neo-pagan. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've kind of like the past year I've kind of been leaning more Buddhist,
Hmm.
honestly.
Yeah.
Um, um, but yeah, express my reverence for the earth and stars. I've still got that. That's good. Yeah, earth and stars is part of the divine,
Right.
as we all
Right.
are. Books, toys, wargaming, minifigures. That's also true. Although at the moment it is mostly Transformers. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah.
Um, I have a lot of Transformers.
Transformers are cool though. Like, I don't know.
Transformers are
They're
fun.
they're very cool.
Um, um, I do have my minifigure painted to look like Elsinore. I have that.
Nice. Oh, nice. You have to share.
Yeah. They're literally out of my chair reach. Um, so yeah, I don't know if this will be able to be visible. Maybe. Can this
Let's
focus?
see.
Can I
Hopefully it
focus this?
will. Although my
Come on, just a little bit.
they're not called cisformers. Sorry.
They're not called Transformers.
They're called transformers.
Yeah, I can't really make this focus.
Yeah,
But it,
sometimes it's just yeah, but I think
yeah,
that's cool that you did that.
yeah, it's a
It is
since
kind of
she's a
blurry.
minifigure, she has little flames. And I gave her a little familiar of a little cat.
Nice.
Excuse
Nice.
me. Like
Yeah.
her cat familiar Risky, who appears
Right.
midway through the book. Um, and I also made a. This is silly. This is a ridiculous thing to be doing, isn't it?
It's okay. It's
Um,
okay.
I did custom paint a Masters of the Universe figure
That's awesome.
to kind of look like Elsinore. I painted her hair. It's actually specifically a Masters of the Universe / WWE crossover figure.
Wonderful.
They had made Masters of the Universe figures of various wrestlers. I
Mhm.
forget what wrestler this is. I don't actually know a lot about wrestling. Um, but I painted her hair
Mhm.
turquoise, and I gave
Nice.
her a little flame thing that I can't pull off.
Nice.
And a little sword
Mhm.
that looks more or less as close as I could find a random toy sword that looks
Right.
like the sword in the book.
Right.
Your little skirts.
Right. Right.
I've been meaning to like post pictures of this, and I
Mhm.
haven't done so. Um, but yeah, no. So basically, I think as an answer to that question, tell us a little bit about yourself. Apparently, I like doodads. I guess that's what you've gotten
Mhm.
from this. um, yeah, I don't know. What's my stuff? I mean, I'm interested in all the things that are in this stupid book.
Yeah.
um, you know, fairies, um, fairies and mythology and things, and my girlfriend, and the area I live is pretty nice. Not to dox myself, but I live in generally the northeast.
Mhm. Yeah.
East?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
I'm not a
Northeast.
mathematician, so I forget which direction is which
Yeah.
sometimes.
Sometimes I
Um,
still have to hold my left hand in an L shape to remember that it's my left hand. So.
Smart.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. No, I don't know. I read and write stuff. Um, and I write stuff about Elsinore, and I write stuff about myself, and I write stuff about poems, and I keep a journal that's
Mm-hmm.
mostly just ridiculous phrases that I say and ridiculous phrases I hear my friends say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And sometimes I go through the journal and I'll see something ridiculous my friend said. Like I'll look at it and I'll see something that my friend Adam said in the journal that's from 2014,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll go to him and say, "Hey, do you remember saying this thing?" And he's like, "Stop writing down the things I say." Um, it's inappropriate.
All the
It's
cringe.
also probably inappropriate to have said that and made fun of him just then. He's wonderful. I love him.
It's okay.
Um,
Hey,
but
if we don't have senses of humor about ourselves, how are we supposed to get through life? You know?
how are we supposed to do it?
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes we just have to laugh,
I don't know.
right?
I don't know what we would do. I think
Mm-hmm.
you're right.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I don't know what there is about myself. It's
yeah.
tough.
That's good though. And one thing that that brought to mind too is how different authors have different ways of visualizing their stories. And you actually made figures of your character, and some people will do drawings, some people will do they'll do collages, they'll put something together on Pinterest. There's really a lot of ways that we interact with our characters when we write, and the things that we do to express that isn't just in our necessarily always in what we write, but the things we do around our writing that helps us to connect with those characters. Yeah. And a natural 20 just said some folks cosplay, and that, yeah, yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna say that my hair isn't turquoise tonight and in the reading because of. I'm not gonna say I didn't. I'm not gonna say I didn't do it kind of on purpose.
Mm-hmm. It works though. It works. It looks great on you too.
I'm not like trying to dress like Elsinore, but I'm also
Right.
at the same time not trying not to.
Right, right. There you go. All right. So the part you read for stream. So I had listened to it earlier, but when I was actually playing it for the stream, I couldn't hear it, and it has been a while since I read the book. So is there anything you could tell? So there's the part that you read for the stream, but then can you tell us a little bit about like the general plot and also the inspiration for the story?
Oh yeah. Um, so I thought you were like going, so you couldn't hear it. So can you tell us what things you read just then?
No, no,
Um,
no.
yeah,
Everybody else heard it
no.
but me.
Okay. I mean, I would have done that. I would have done that. I would have
Mhm.
immediately done that. Yeah. How do I sum it up? Um, I went over this a bunch of times in a bunch of ways with the team at Balance of Seven,
Mhm.
uh, um, like before publication. Like how do summarize best? What's the
Right.
best thing to put on the back cover?
Right.
Um, like
Right.
I'm not used to. I guess I'm out of practice
Mhm. Yeah.
from my English bachelor's. I have a bachelor's degree in English. That's another thing about me.
Nice. Nice.
I'm out of practice from that of giving a what do you call it, Tracy
Mhm.
summary thing.
Right. Right.
Um, so we came up with something that I think is really good
Mhm.
on the back. Although I don't think that's the answer to your question. Anybody
If
can
you
shoot.
want to read the book blurb, you can.
Oh
Sometimes
yeah.
something that we talk about, and it reconnected. So
Okay.
let's hold on for a
Sorry.
moment. I think our viewers have lost for a moment, um, but we can vamp a little bit while we're waiting for them to show back up. Here, I'm gonna put a note in chat.
Yeah, sorry,
Okay.
my connection is poor.
All right, the stream is back up, so we have our viewers are here. Good, good, good. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. I will definitely be making sure when I put the video on YouTube that any section that might have gotten split off will be reconnected for the YouTube video should you want to watch it later. But yeah, so we were talking about the book blurb and the elevator pitch.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. It says my connection is poor, which it is.
Yeah, that's okay.
That's just where I live and what my internet's like. Um, but yeah, no, I guess I did come up with an elevator pitch. I just forgot what it is and forgot where I had it.
Right, right.
But basically, a it's a young woman who is a priestess and magic user in a temple in a far future dying Earth. Sets out on a quest into a mysterious otherworld in order to discover the answers to the secrets and mysteries that have haunted her for her entire living memory.
Mm-hmm.
And in the process discovers deep hidden truths about herself and the world that she lives in.
Mm-hmm. I love
Ooh.
that. It's a journey to self-discovery, which
Yeah.
is I think is one of the fundamental best approaches to any kind of fantasy type novel. Is it's a or science fiction too, a chance to discover our own humanity.
Really, Aspen, really any kind of fiction.
Right, right, true.
Not merely not merely fantasy and science fiction, but the
Right,
great American novel.
right. Yeah. And
Is this like The Great Gatsby? Perhaps?
it's your Great Gatsby. Although,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if The Great Gatsby is better than this, so.
Yeah. Take that, Fitzgerald!
Yeah.
You jazz age bitch. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. Again,
Don't hate her.
this is absolutely a casual, friendly conversation, so there's room for silliness.
Can I use swear words?
Mm. Yes, you
I don't
can.
want to
You
use.
can.
I don't.
We
I don't
are
want to use.
we are we are an 18 plus stream.
All right.
So, yeah, yeah. Oh,
Well,
Giva's here.
I I did just watch that Transformers movie the other day, and they called
Uh-huh.
each other glitches.
Glitches.
So I can do that. Call F. Scott Fitzgerald, you jazz age glitch.
I think it works.
Um, no, he's fine. He's great. They're
Right.
it's Zelda.
Mhm.
Zelda,
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah, I mean
Zelda Fitzgerald.
it's a classic story for sure.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. But
So
sometimes, when we're writers and we write our own stories, we kind of do tend to want our stories to be remembered in a similar way as, sometime in the future our writing is considered a classic.
to be clear, I don't know that my story's going to be.
You never know. You never
Don't
know.
that hubristic. The Great
Right.
Gatsby is an incredible book.
Yes, true.
It
True,
is
true,
truly great.
true.
I'm
Right.
I'm like F. Don't worry, F. Scott.
Yeah, yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. The ghost of F. Scott
Yes,
Fitzgerald
I'm
needs to remember we still admire the writing that he did.
Yeah, I'm just playing around. I'm just playing around with him.
Right, right.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah.
I'm totally lost again. What my
Okay. Well. You gave
I mean,
the
what
general
about
plot line of the story. Well, what was the inspiration?
That was a good question. Yeah. The inspiration was like a bunch of things, and I talk about some of that um, in the afterword to the book.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, um, I'm like, I love a good afterword. I
Mm-hmm.
love a good thing where the author just talks to you and says like, here's some stuff maybe you didn't know about.
Right, right.
It's stuff that I was reading about. And so I talk about some of that there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but generally, um, my inspirations were a lot of mythology and fairy tales.
Mm-hmm.
I pretty clearly always really loved Greek mythology
Mm-hmm.
and um, and Irish mythology
Mm-hmm.
and Sumerian mythology. Um,
Right.
Sumerian things kind of got into a bunch of the book, um, and particularly the descent of Inanna.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to a certain extent, part of like the structure of the book or part of the book was a riff or elaboration or ripoff of the descent of Inanna structure.
Mm-hmm.
If you're familiar with that myth, um, it is very interesting. It is one of the earliest. Well, I guess it's one of the earliest writings at all because it's cuneiform from
Mm-hmm.
Sumer, and that's the earliest writing.
Right.
Um, but it's one of the earliest stories about a god going into the underworld
Mm-hmm.
and then returning from the underworld, which is a theme in Princess of the Pomegranate Moon.
Right.
Um, other inspirations had included that like fairy stories, stories about people encountering fairies, particularly
Mm-hmm.
in Irish folklore.
Right. Like
Um,
you mentioned in Irish folklore, like Tamlin.
mhm.
You know, since I'm a folklore person too, which is probably why I connected with your book so much because,
Yeah,
you know, the
yeah,
the 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 we I think both of us probably are inspired by some very similar things. If you're inspired by folklore too, so yeah,
go
yeah,
Tamlin.
right, right. But yeah, and that brings up like the whole idea too. A lot of people say there's only a finite number of plots that all
Oh my
stories are
god.
based on, and which I think is in a way it's a little bit silly, but it's also, you
Mhm,
know, we get inspiration from somewhere, you
mhm,
know, and um, if it's like sometimes, you know, we think about people who even they write fan fiction. You know, they get their inspiration from fiction that already exists, and then they take their own spin and put that on it, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like it's
oh,
us exploring storytelling in and playing in different sandboxes essentially. So there's not there it's a great way to express our imaginations is through the stories that we already know and telling another version of it that uh, particularly speaks to ourselves. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. There's a lot of like I've heard that and I think about that. Like there's only so many actual stories, and sometimes there are stories where they're very similar, like in terms of their
Mm-hmm.
plot or something, but
Mm-hmm.
it's the execution
Right.
that does that.
Right.
Um,
Right.
there was something I can't remember where I read this or who said this. Somebody said this. It was the title of a Cory Doctorow book, but I don't know if Cory Doctorow. I don't think Cory Doctorow coined this. I think it was. based on that phrase, or maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was going to that. Is that there's only actually two plots
Mm-hmm.
at all ever, and there's somebody comes to town and somebody leaves town.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. Right.
In the same sense as, like, I was thinking of those charts where it's like, here are all of the conflicts that there can be. Man versus man versus nature, man versus God. The
Right.
particular chart that I'm thinking of is a picture of different Daffy Duck cartoons in those particular situations.
Right. Right.
But it's a meme that was on social media somewhere. But
There's a lot of
you know,
those.
so like this is
Right.
very much, I think, this is woman versus. My card fell out of the book just then. I don't know if that was caught on camera. This is woman versus. What is this woman versus? This is woman versus woman. This is self versus self.
Yeah. Probably. Yeah. I would say that's woman versus self. I think that's the closest thing I can think of.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
really versus society. It's not really versus nature.
Right.
Kind of versus self. And it's, the plot is definitely someone comes to town. That first scene that I read there was someone comes to town.
Right.
So.
Right.
Take this up before I step on it. So yeah.
Right. Yeah.
We all put our own spin on things. And
Absolutely.
That's what every story is.
Right. And that's the thing that we really need to focus on when it comes to, even if a plot line, a basic plot line has been done before, it's the voice that matters, essentially. Because that's what pulls us in. That's what helps us to relate to the characters and everything.
That's why I was like, if you're going to write something that's going to be influenced by something, maybe I should try and be influenced by, like, one of the earliest and simplest stories.
Right.
With the Century Nana.
Right.
And then just elaborate on that. Yeah,
Right.
that's basically it, right?
Yeah. So, in general, for you, what are some of the challenges that you experience with writing, and maybe some advice you can give to other writers?
Oh, geez. I don't know. Well, I have an answer to this. Actually, it's kind of inappropriate. It's not inappropriate.
Don't worry, I
No,
trust you.
here. Actually, I have a simple, and appropriate way of putting it, which I can elaborate on. But be yourself. Try to speak with your own voice. Be comfortable with yourself, and be familiar with your own voice in your head.
Right.
And whether you do that by thinking a lot, or talking to people, or journaling, or stuff. Be familiar with yourself. I mean, this isn't great advice in the play Hamlet, but to thine own self be true.
Right.
Polonius isn't a great, it's ironic when Polonius is giving his long speech to. I'm sorry, I'm just going on about Hamlet.
That's okay.
There's the scene in Hamlet where Polonius starts giving his life advice to his son Laertes, and all of the advice is just, he's just giving bad, cliched advice, and Laertes is like, well, I gotta go.
Right.
And then Laertes is like, and Polonius is like, to thine own self.
Right. It's like,
that's good.
Kid, blow your nose, change your underwear every day, take a shower. Bye, Dad.
When you go off to college, don't be out there gambling and so on. Just, stay. That's basically what Polonius is.
Right.
Hamlet. Sorry, that was one of the. That's an
inspiration. Right.
That's an inspiration. I've been obsessed with Hamlet for my entire life.
Hamlet, definitely one of the best of Shakespeare's plays. I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had in high school, I had a poster that I got at Borders that consisted of just the text of Hamlet
Nice.
on a poster.
Nice. Oh,
They
I
had
love that.
this company did like a bunch of other ones that were like an entire play or an entire short book
Right.
on a poster
Yeah.
and just
Well,
like thin columns.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and I think that's still at my parents' house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's still on the wall of my old bedroom at my parents'
Right,
house.
right. Well, if it's
But
any consolation, I have an entire scarf that has the entirety of The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe on it. So I understand. I understand. Sometimes
nice,
words are the art, you know?
nice.
Right, right.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, obviously that's where the name Elsinore comes from.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Right,
Um,
right.
but yeah, for writing, yeah, be understand yourself and be be open and honest about yourself.
Right,
When
right.
you're writing, you're making stuff up, but you're not really making stuff up. You're really telling the truth. You're telling the real truth, right?
Right.
Is that something? Is that true? That's something. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Um,
think a lot of people will like think, "Oh, well, I want to be like this writer, I want to be like that writer." But if you're not telling your own story and trying too hard to
yeah.
mimic other writers, the honesty behind the intention of the story isn't going to be as clear, and it's not going to
Mm,
come out as well because they're trying too hard to use another author's style or words and not enough their own.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do your own thing, man.
Right. Right.
Um, and like for me, like what I really had to do to like be open and honest about myself in my writing was transition.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know if this has come up yet. I don't know if people are aware of this, but I'm a trans woman. Have we mentioned that before?
I don't like we haven't directly.
Hi, my name is Emily. Has that come up?
Yes.
Um, yeah, and um, like I don't like this is pretty personal, but
Mm-hmm.
like I wrote a lot when I was younger, and I wrote a lot in college and high school, and um, but like I don't know, a lot of it just I just dropped off being able to write and to be able to do anything for years
Mm-hmm.
after I stopped being forced to by school. Um,
Right.
and a lot of that was dysphoria.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that was not being comfortable with myself or the
Right.
world around me or the way I'm treated or anything.
Right.
Um, and like when I started transitioning,
Mm-hmm.
I started writing more, and
Mm-hmm.
I did like a little bit. Like I wrote some stuff and sort of worked my way up for like a few years. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I'll tell you what got me started really writing and like really focusing on it and working on it, and what got me started writing the draft for Princess of the Pomegranate Moon was progesterone. I started adding for my in my HRT,
Mm-hmm.
my for
Mm-hmm.
the viewers and listeners out there who don't know, hormone replacement therapy is a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's something.
Mm-hmm.
And look into it if you're interested. And when I added um, progesterone to my
Mm-hmm.
hormone replacement therapy, I was just like I was focused. I was focused like a fine laser.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right.
I was like, oh, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna write a novel right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you
And I
did.
like, yeah, I like started progesterone like in 1 year in like October or
Mm-hmm.
something. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna write an entire novel by the end of November.
Right, right.
Which there used to be a thing for that.
Yeah,
Which
yeah,
I wouldn't,
yeah. That
I
we
wouldn't
won't
know.
mention that because it's kind of
For
sad
for
now.
in my defense, I've never been participated as a member or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I've barely been aware that there's an organization. I'm not really sure how you can have an organization about that.
Right,
Like just write a book.
right,
I'm not trying to make friends about it.
right,
I guess I am. That's
right,
literally what I'm doing right now.
right, right.
Um, but I'm not like part of an organization. I'm not a joiner.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a
Yeah,
joiner actually. I do my own thing.
yeah. I mean, I know for myself
Um,
the first full manuscript I actually wrote from beginning to end. Like, it was because I had hit a point in the year that tends to be very hard for me. And for some reason, that just, this creative burst happened, and I wrote a manuscript in a week,
hot damn.
you know? And I was like, wait, I finished it? Like I'd
Right.
never done that before, and that kind of opened the doors, and then I started writing more. So you never know what it's gonna be. There's gonna be something, and it hits, and it's like everything falls together.
You did it all within one of Saturn's own weeks.
Right, right. That was crazy. It was a young adult novel, so it wasn't as long as like a, you know,
Doesn't matter.
right, right. And that's the thing. When you write,
See,
as long as you're writing something, as long as you are thinking about it and then putting it on paper, you are a writer,
yeah. Oh yeah.
you know? And the only way to continue writing is to continue doing it. I mean, it's like with music. You practice all the time to get better. So and with art, with any kind of thing where you are doing something creative, it's a constant thing. You work on it,
Mhm.
and it'll come into play as long as you can continue working on it.
Yeah. Oh no, for real.
It's really a
Yeah.
study in not giving up, you know?
Studying, not giving up.
Right. Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's a Sherlock Holmes mystery for you.
Exactly.
Studying, not giving up.
Right, right.
Watson's like, oh Holmes, I'm tired.
Yeah,
Holmes is
yeah.
like, Watson, don't give up. And
Right.
that's how they solve the case.
Right, exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
no, that's true. I was out of practice for so long
Mhm.
after college and stuff, and like then I got several years of getting back into I got several years of getting back into practice and being regular about it.
Mhm.
You know, do it do it regularly. Don't if you're mentally not able to do this sort of thing, and I understand that.
Right.
Um, I understand stresses and things. Don't be like I have to write for 3 hours between the hours of 6 a.m. and
Right.
9
Right.
a.m. every day.
Yeah. And
I'm not a
and
representative.
and it
But
doesn't have to be working on
okay.
the same piece every
Yeah,
single time.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
if
yeah.
you don't feel like you're at a point where you can continue on this one story, this is why so many authors have multiple manuscripts going on at one time. Like I probably have like at least a half dozen on my computer, probably more, of not just
Mhm,
novels but short stories and such.
mhm,
And it's okay to switch from one project to another if
mhm,
you don't feel the inspiration for one project, but the other one's right there. And sometimes it is good to give yourself a break and a breather, so that it stops feeling like, it's not good if it feels like a chore.
yeah,
you know
yeah. That's a really good point, and I really appreciate that. And I think that's a good thing for people to keep in mind. Is don't if you get stuck on something, or you get bored with something, or you're not able to focus on something, try turning your gaze to something else.
Right, right.
And if you're not inspired by something, try turning your gaze to something else that might be inspiring.
Right.
And that
Right.
could help you move forward with your creativity
Right.
in a lot of ways.
Right. And
You
also,
know,
don't be afraid to do weird things like spend 5 hours researching damask wallpaper. You know?
absolutely spend 5 hours researching Dennis
I
Walker.
mean, because then you know how to describe it. Because you really took the time to really look at it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Write what you
that's
know.
right. And that's what a lot of artists do too. You have to look at things in order to create your
Yeah.
paintings and your sculptures and your drawings. You know, it's the same thing with writing. You need to be an observer just as much as you are somebody who tells a story.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Very true.
Do you want to tell us anything about something that means something to you?
Something that means something to me. I don't know. A lot of things mean things to me. Um. Hmm. Halloween.
Yes.
Shit. Yeah. Halloween means something to me. Halloween means a lot to me.
Yes.
As I said earlier, am I really strictly speaking neo-pagan? I guess neo-pagan is general enough. Like I'm not Wicca. I'm not um any particular thing really,
Mm-hmm.
but I do consider life, and I do consider the earth and the stars and the motions of the earth and time to be sacred. And um and we're approaching the time of Samhain.
Mm-hmm.
Um so that's like one of the seasonal times that I am most feel most spiritual about,
Mm-hmm.
and feels most important. That transition out of the night on October 31st into November 1st,
Mm-hmm.
and the month of November, the month of Sun,
Mm-hmm.
at that turning point in the year. Um, and just it's from a neat kind of a nature worship and pantheistic perspective. It's sacred,
Mm-hmm.
um, but also just um, personally and nostalgically, it's around Halloween time, and that has always been just the coolest. That's always the time that I like the most. Like I like nighttime, and I like it when it's a little cool out
Yeah. Yeah.
more than summer.
Same here.
Um, I don't like the sun, and I don't like the heat.
Right.
I am
Me
famous for
either.
telling my friends how much I hate the sun. Um, and in the waning of the year and the twilight of the year,
Mm-hmm.
isn't that a time when you can be cozy and comfortable?
Right, right.
Right?
I always feel like this is a time of year for. It's a great time to kind of regroup,
Yeah.
and it's and you said it's cozy, it's comforting. I could not possibly agree with you more. It's
Mhm.
true, and
It.
it's definitely like you feel like it's a time of shifting. You
Mhm.
know, I mean, you see the leaves change. You see, things around you change. Even the traditions we have around this time of year, where people are back into school and they're studying, and yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We've got a lot of fall traditions of changing things. Go vote, by the way.
Yeah, yeah, vote.
That's can be stressful
Yeah, yeah. Oh my
to think
gosh.
about. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's something. Go vote.
Yes, go vote. People don't exercise their right to vote enough.
If I leave you with anything,
Yeah, yeah. Please go
um,
vote.
go. You know,
Yeah.
yeah.
All
That's
right.
one of the changing things of the season
Right, right, right.
that occurred to
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
just then.
There's
Um,
there's a question in chat, by the way.
oh, what's the question?
All
Is it
right.
who am I gonna vote for?
No, 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 no. I think that would just open a whole ball of wax that would change the entire topic of this conversation.
It is Kamala Harris, though.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, go
yeah.
on. What's the question?
So the question is, what topic have you looked up on the internet for fiction that really should have gotten you on an FBI watch list?
Oh, jeez. What topic haven't I looked up on the internet for fiction that should have
Oh
gotten me on
my
an FBI watch
gosh.
list?
Right.
Let's see what my open tabs
Right.
are.
I for writing specifically, I think I may have looked up stuff about swords. That's probably the closest that would get me to
Yeah,
an FBI watch list.
yeah.
Possibly, crossbows. Definitely crossbows.
That's
I
not
did look
fair.
up something about crossbows. But
People love crossbows are for the children.
right, right.
People people love every normal family loves a sword.
Yeah, who doesn't?
Who doesn't love a
They're
sword?
classic. Every
That's
culture has an interesting sword,
Every culture has an interesting sword.
you know?
Different cultures in different times have
Right.
always had a different word for what we would now call a sword.
Correct.
There's an in joke for like two people who know me. But I'm not gonna explain that. But what things have I FBI? This won't get me an FBI watch list, but I have been researching a lot about Lilith Fair for
Mm-hmm.
something that I'm writing.
Okay.
There's like a couple things I've been bouncing back and forth about writing. That thing you were saying, like write one thing, and then if you're
Mm-hmm.
moves you write work on a different thing.
Right.
And one of them, I'm really reading a lot about Lilith Fair about it.
Mm-hmm.
The 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 music festival.
Right, right.
That's not getting me on an FBI watch list though.
Maybe not.
The Roman the Roman religious concept of noumena.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's not really getting me on an FBI watch list.
Laws for human
Um,
body home burial is my watch list term, but that was for family.
I
Oh, that's
I promise I can find something from my that I've been researching that can get me on an FBI watch list.
what?
I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but I can find it.
You'll find
I
it.
can find something.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of other things I've looked up.
I'm just trying to like fill the like I don't want to just you know
Right.
drop the chat and just be like what am I looking at? Um,
I've looked up certain kinds of illnesses. I think I looked up leprosy at one point.
that's a good one.
I've but I usually tend to look things up more that are related to things I used to describe scenery.
Hmm.
So like the damask wallpaper, for example, or spiral staircases, or things that I can help me use to help me describe something. Um,
Yeah. Oh
Go ahead.
no, I thought of a great dark answer to this question actually.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what things have I researched for my writing that can get me put on an FBI watch list? Well, in the bad timeline, how to be a transsexual.
Oh no!
How's that?
Oh
Is that the answer you wanted?
no! There we go. Actually, come to think of it, I was looking up herbs at one point to figure out which ones are
Oh,
poisonous or not. That was yeah. Yeah.
yeah. You know what? That's another thing that could probably get me put on the FBI watch list. Is I mean,
Mhm.
reading Princess of the Pomegranate Moon.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, there was the part in the opening where she just does pot.
Mhm.
Um, and that's not the only psychoactive drug she does during the course of the book, as you might recall.
Mhm.
Has been. Um,
Yeah.
some might recall that is not the only psychoactive drug she does during the course of the book, and I'm, I'm definitely got to research that in some way.
Right. Right. The things we do for
There's
fiction,
Wikipedia.
so that we can accurately describe things in ways that make sense.
Yes.
So, even if the reader is not familiar with it, they'll
Mm-hmm.
understand what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, we take the L so everybody else can get the W.
That's right. That's why, but that's why after you do any kind of internet search, you always put after that for the novel I am writing.
Right, right. There you go.
Do not put me on an watch list. I am writing a novel.
Right,
How to
right,
hide a body in my novel.
right. I am harmless. This is for fiction.
This is for fiction. Do not arrest me.
Right. I mean no harm. We come in peace.
Do no harm.
Exactly.
Do as thou wilt, but harm none.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I can steal my neighbor's bike in my novel. Yeah. True. True. So let's see. Are there any goals that you have, whether writing related or not? Because as I mentioned, we do have a manuscript of yours for Balance of Seven, because we're looking over all of our submissions right now and everything. But you can talk a little bit about that. But other goals that you have that may not necessarily be writing related too also count.
Other goals that I have that aren't writing related and that I can say without getting me put on an FBI watch
Right. Yeah.
list.
Yeah. I mean, we
um,
we, we just want to live our lives.
I just want to. That's my goal,
Mm-hmm.
Aspen.
That's a good goal.
I just want to live my life.
True. True. I can agree with
I
that.
just, I just want us to live our lives in peace
Right. I think
without.
that's a reasonable ask. Very reasonable ask.
Yeah. I don't think that's. I don't think that's too much to ask.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
No.
very reasonable.
Um. Yeah. I mean, I want to write more. I want to have people see more of my writing. I want to, um, stuff like that. But no, I
Right,
want
right.
to live in peace and not be oppressed by vicious anxieties
Mm-hmm.
of
Yeah.
which surround me, as they
And
do
some of
all of us.
those could be things that we, are doing to ourselves, but sometimes the world is not a nice place and we want to make it nicer,
Hmm.
you know?
And
And
and I wish this for everybody.
right, right. I,
We
I,
should,
I very much agree.
yeah.
Yeah. Yay.
I guess that's my goal.
Yeah. Do you want something I want to mention too is look at this. Look at this cover, people. Look at this cover for this book. This is such a great cover. I love the art for the cover.
From
That
from the
was
great artist
Rue.
Bruce Sparks.
Rue Sparks. Yeah. Who also did the cover for another Balance of Seven book called Queer for the New Year. Um, but yeah, I love this art so much. I got to help out in talking with Rue and communicating with Rue about the cover. And one of the things Balance of Seven does is the authors get to really be involved in the cover art, which is actually not very common when it comes to the major publishers.
Yeah.
They sometimes major publishers, they will choose the cover art, they will choose the title, they will do all the other stuff other than writing the book itself for the author without any feedback or input from the author. So, the fact that this cover itself had so much input from you, Emily, I think that's really important because the cover is part of telling the story. Yes, yes, Nairi's spoken about that as well. Right, right. So,
Already talking about Nairi in the chat.
yeah, yeah, we love Nairi.
I love
Nairi's
Nairi.
amazing. Nairi is,
Nairi's great.
and I'll have to do an interview with Nairi sometime because,
Oh yes.
oh yeah, I mean, so Nairi is another Balance of Seven author. For those who don't know, she I believe is one of the, if not the best-selling author for the entire press,
That
and
that would not surprise me.
yeah, yeah, and she has PhDs in military and Japanese history.
Mhm.
And yes, author of Confluence and Grey Dawn. And she streams herself. In fact, she does a lot of art
Yeah.
and she talks about history. And oh my gosh, once you get her started talking about Date Masamune, she will not stop. She loves the Sengoku period, particularly talking about Date Masamune. So it's like it's such a treasure when you listen to somebody talking about something they're passionate about, and yeah, yeah, she's fantastic.
Yeah. Please get Nairi on the stream.
Yeah, yeah, I'll have to talk with her about that sometime because it's definitely a goal for sure. Actually, I'm hoping at some point to get most of, if not all of the past authors for Balance of Seven, including those who wrote for the anthologies as well. I mean, we have, gosh, that would bring us to at least 50 authors we've published, including those who've been in anthologies, somewhere around there.
Nice.
So, we have lots of authors to talk with or have conversations with. And we also have, we do want to open it up to other indie and small press authors as well because it's not easy to find ways to get heard. I think a lot of publishers don't really do very much to support their authors when it comes to getting connected with ways to talk about our books. So that's something we really want to work on here. So yeah, that's our goal. Anyway. But yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it's a good one.
Mhm.
It's a good
Yeah,
call.
yeah. So I don't know. We're almost out of time. Is there anything else you'd like to mention? Talk about. I mean, yeah, we've already talked about upcoming projects because we have that manuscript. I don't know if you want to say anything about that. Um,
Well, I mean, that manuscript was is largely it's entirely sequel material to
mhm.
Princess of the Pomegranate Moon.
Right.
One of the main things that I wanted with that book to begin with was another inspiration for the book is sword and sorcery fantasy
Mhm.
in general. Like that's a
Right.
genre I really love.
Mhm.
And um, what I wanted to do, and I've said this a number of times. I might say this in the afterword. I've definitely said this on social media a ton. Is that I wanted to have like a serialized style sword and sorcery hero,
Mhm.
um, who is a trans woman. Like
Mhm.
there's serialized stories of um, one of the main ones that I always liked was Elric of Melniboné, Michael
Right.
Moorcock's Elric of Melniboné.
Right.
Um, uh, what are other ones I'm
The
blanking?
Witcher.
Yeah,
There's a few, but a lot of
there's
times most of them have. Usually, most of them are led by male characters, and it's kind of nice to have another type of lead. You know.
yeah. Although not like they say the first Conan the like there's Conan the Barbarian.
Mhm.
Um, but the first like kind of pastiche, I think they've said it's not really a pastiche, of Conan the Barbarian was a woman
Mm-hmm.
character, who was CL CL Moore's Jirel of Jouari.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like that, like that's another one. Jirel of Jouari, Conan the
Mm-hmm.
Barbarian,
Right.
Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser by Fritz Leiber.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Joanna Russ,
Mm-hmm.
Joanna Russ's Adventures of Alex.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you know, it's a lot of them are male led, and then a lot of them like exist kind of in conversation with each other,
Mm-hmm.
in a literary sense, in conversation with each other. And
Mm-hmm.
what I really wanted to do was have an ongoing adventure story heroine who's a
Right.
gentleman, and
Right.
so the um, the manuscript that I'm having to be looked at the moment is
Mm-hmm.
sort of a collection of short stories and novellas, like sort of adventures about Elsinore following her
Mm-hmm.
adventures in this book.
Right. Right.
Um, and that's kind of one of the main things I wanted to do when writing this book, was to set that up so that I can just continue telling adventure
Right.
stories about this character.
Right. Right.
um, like I like the main character of my book a lot, and
Mm-hmm.
I want to keep telling stories about her,
Yeah. Yeah.
basically.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
And I'll do it, no matter what it takes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Yay. Well, it's been really great having you here. I'm so glad we were able to do this. I know that we'd talked about this a few months ago, so this has definitely been in the works for a while, everyone. Um, but yeah, hopefully, at some point we can have you back again and talk about the next book.
I would
So,
love to be back again.
yeah,
It was lovely to talk.
yeah,
It was lovely to be here, Aspen. This was
yeah.
this is a very it's a nice crowd you got here.
Yeah, we like to be cozy and supportive and,
Mhm.
make a good experience for everybody. So,
Yeah,
yeah, all right. Well,
thank you.
have a really wonderful evening, and thank you everyone for coming. We really appreciate you being here, and I'm really happy I got the chance to introduce you to Emily and this amazing book that you should read for sure. Let me do one thing here. I am going. Oops. Let's see. Balance. BAL. You could see my. Oh, there it is. Balance of Seven Star. That is. I know you're all seeing this on screen right now. That's for the book that we did before. But if you look on the Balance of Seven Store, where is she? Where is the book? Where is
I was
it?
looking at that recently. I was like, this is how it's organized. It's organized
Right.
alphabetically, I think.
It
Mine's
has
at the
it's ordered.
bottom.
It's organized by like sections, but also stuff.
Yeah,
So that is balance. Here, I'm gonna put the here. Um,
there was part of it that was organized alphabetically by author. I
yeah,
don't remember which section it was, but it was something was, and I was like, Wynne, down there.
that's what I'm looking at right now. And here I'm gonna take this down. You can find this book on Amazon as well in Kindle format, and you can order it on paper as well. Always better to buy directly from the press because then there's less middleman money that gets spent, so more royalties go to the author and to the press. You can also find it on itch.io as well. If you prefer not to use Kindle for ebooks, you can get it there. And yeah, I mean, it's if you can't get it at your local store and you want to get it at your local store, they don't have it, they can order it and get it for you. Although, it's easy enough to order it online anyway. But yeah, so check it out. Definitely worth the read. And yeah, yeah. Yay. All right, so have a wonderful night, everyone. We are going to try to raid into a friend of mine who's streaming Silent Hill 2.
Ooh.
Yeah. Hopefully, he's still streaming while we're doing this. But yeah, I'm so happy we got to do this.
If I can say one more thing.
Yes, please.
The friend that I mentioned earlier in the stream, Adam,
Mm-hmm.
he and I started playing Silent Hill 2 in college. And we never finished it. And we talk about that constantly. We talked about it the other day.
Mm-hmm.
So please, yeah, if you can drop in on your friends playing Silent Hill 2, that sounds exciting.
Yeah.
That's Halloween.
Right. Okay, well, next time I'll be on will be on Sunday. I will be streaming The Mortuary Assistant, and I will get my stream schedule out. And I am going to get the word out to more authors who I know to see when we can do the next episode of What's Your Story. So thank you for being here, everybody. And I am going to go ahead and let Emily go.
Thank you for having me,
Unnatural
Aspen.
20
Thank you
just
for being here,
followed.
everybody.
Right.
Thank you for viewing, and please take care and be safe.
Yes. Absolutely. All right. Have a good night.
I do here. Leave the meeting.
Yes.
All right, great.
All right. Cool. Bye.
I'm not very technical.
That's okay. I'll just hang up and leave the meeting, and then I'll let you go. Okay. Bye. Thank you. All right. Okay. So I'm going to switch to the just chatting screen real quick. There we go. And I am going to see if Panda Hero is still doing this. He is. Oh, he is still raiding. Oh, yeah. And we can raid this time. Oh, yes. Last time we were having some problems with raiding, but it's working today. So I'm going to start the raid right now. We are going to go visit Panda Hero Roo and have a wonderful evening, everybody. Take care. Bye.